Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Good evening and welcome into Lombardi's Legends podcast. I am Wags, and of course, joining me as always is Dane. Unfortunately, Dane, it's been a little bit of a slide, a tough 4 weeks, 3 losses for this Packer team in the last 4 weeks when you include the bye. So Packers tried to make a little bit of a comeback in the second half yesterday in Denver, but ultimately were not able to hang on in the end, fall 19-17, and are now 2-4 on the season. So, Dane, before we get your reaction to how you're feeling, I guess one thing I will say as you get on our live stream here is certainly I think there's a lot of frustration with Packer fans and us included. So we're just going to do probably a little bit of a different type of recap episode tonight. It's going to be turning back the clock to when we first started and maybe changing the roles around a little bit, because when we first started, McCarthy's last season as a coach, as it turned out, I was kind of the negative guy saying we've got to move on, and Dane was the voice of reason. I think even deep down, understanding that it probably was time throughout that season. But Dane, I know you have some grievances to get to tonight. So before I just give you the floor and you can decide where you want to go, first of all, how you feeling? Are you feeling a little bit better? We know you were sick last episode we recorded.
Hey buddy. Yeah, I'm feeling better physically. But my Packer fandom is extra frustrated right now. I'm so frustrated. I don't know where to begin. I don't have anything planned. I'm just extremely frustrated. And I think I speak for a lot of Packer fans out there that there's not one thing. Maybe I'll start with the bright side of life, Wags, is we haven't gone through this many like losing streaks to this degree over the last 20-25 years. However, I'm not used to it. I don't like it. I'm sick of it. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of answers out there. So there's, I think, a lot of blame to go around, and we can kind of break it down a little bit. But my goodness, it was just a frustrating performance by the offense. Yet again, another slow start, sloppy in extremely important moments, even on the final drive. You don't see holds very often on the final drives like that, especially for veteran players. Missed blocks, missed assignments, quarterback didn't look sharp. I just across the board offensively, extremely frustrated. Defensively, I thought played pretty well, all things considered, held the Broncos under 20 points. Still, the Broncos offense has been so bad this year that I would have liked it to actually, believe it or not, been less than that, but I can't get on the defense as much because the offense just wasn't doing very much. So Wags, coming out of a bye week, and just nothing seemed to be fixed coming out of the bye week. There seemed to be no improvement on play calling, no creativity there. So I just, forgive me, folks, for just dumping to start this podcast, but I think I'm speaking for a lot of y'all out there right now that we're just frustrated. We're flabbergasted, and now we're 2-4 after losing to a 1-win, very bad Denver Broncos team. So I'm kind of sick to my stomach as a Packer fan tonight.
Yeah, and that's understandable, Dane. I think you've given us a lot to work with. So why don't we take a step back and focus in? And I'm just going to ask you the question, and really just for the sake of our sanity, so maybe we'll feel a little bit better by the end of this episode. Let's start with the worst thing that you think is going on with this Packer team right now, and we can gradually work our way up to what shreds of hope do we have for starting next week and the season moving forward. So Dane, what's your number one gripe, if you will, just whether it be something specifically strategically, something coaching staff, play calling, performance, injuries. What is your number one gripe right now with the Packers? And maybe just taking even a step back and not thinking so much about this one game or the last couple of games, but just in general, the malaise that seems to be hanging over this team at this point.
Malaise is the perfect word, I think, for maybe the root of my frustrations. There seems to be actually, it's a little bit of coaching, it's a little bit of player, but I think it's actually a little bit more on coaching. And what it is I don't think that the playmakers are getting put in the best position to be successful. I think that goes for Jordan Love. I think that goes for the wide receivers. I think even Aaron Jones coming back this week, I don't think was utilized particularly creatively. And, I think that's the root of the frustration is there a lot of blame to go around on the offense? Absolutely. Did Jordan Love make some pretty bad mistakes? Of course. Yes, he did. We all saw that. But I also don't know if he was put in the best position by the coaching staff. And I'm not, for all we hear about Matt LaFleur being, creative offensive coach, and I'm not ready to pull the plug on Matt LaFleur, by the way. So let's get that out of the way right away. But I'm super disappointed that this team kind of comes out flat. The team's sloppy. The team looks unorganized time and time again, and the players are put in a tough position. So I know that's a lot of things, Wags, but maybe it does start with this kind of the leadership up top of how can we expect mistakes out of young guys. We do. But how can week in and week out guys continue to make similar mistakes? And how can there continue to be, it's like things aren't being corrected when the mistakes happen. And that's a really frustrating thing. So I would say that it's the continual sloppiness and mistakes, and also guys just not being put in a position to succeed early on. And then they're pressing and doing too much when they need to try to come back and win a football game. So I guess I know that's broad, but damn, I'm frustrated right now.
Yeah, no, Dane, I think just sticking with the offensive side of the ball, when you look at the last few games, the last 4 games, actually, first half offense for the Packers, and we won one of those games when you go back to, week 3 against the Saints, and they came alive and made that great comeback in the fourth quarter. You think that's going to be something that's all of a sudden a moment to build on.
Yes.
Lions come in and just blow us out of the water the next week. Okay, the Lions are probably the only playoff team that we've faced so far. Now, maybe the Falcons squeak in or the Saints make it. Someone out of that NFC South has got to make it. But I'm talking like clear playoff caliber team, and yet we sit at 2-4. So, I think when you think about the coaching, it's too many a mini bye and a full week bye, and they still come out flat against the worst statistical defense in the league. Now, Denver's got a good coaching staff, so I don't want to sell them short. I'm sure they're making some improvements from what we saw early in the season, but then why isn't our coaching staff able to make some of those same improvements with the young talent that we have on the offensive side of the ball when it's the same story 4 consecutive weeks? You can hold players accountable, but to me, that screams a coaching problem on the offensive side. And with Coach LaFleur as the head man, and he's the one, with basically the accountability stops with him. And mind you, this is also not just this season problem. We've seen we saw a ton of inconsistency on the offensive side of the ball last year, even with a more veteran roster on the offense. And frankly, even in Aaron Rodgers' MVP seasons, we saw some ups and downs before Rodgers would just go on these 5-game tears and just statistically just really clean up. I think it's interesting, Dane, the conversation when it comes to Coach LaFleur. Is he going to end up being on the hot seat this season? I think you said at the top, you're not calling for his job. This is not what we're doing here. I don't think ultimately he will this year unless things really fall apart. However, at a certain point, you've got to be held accountable for the job you're doing. Are you actually improving the team that's out on the field every week? And so far on this young season, for the offensive side of the ball, as much heat as fans like to put on Joe Barry and the defense, right. This is not a defense problem right now. No, that doesn't mean Joe Barry is all of a sudden an amazing defensive coordinator in our eyes, Dane. But right now, the defense is not the side of that's not the side of the football. That's the problem. And so it becomes an interesting talking point when you're talking about this Packers team and the coaching that's being done overall, when the head coach is responsible for the offense and the offense is just playing a stinker week after week after week, and it's the same problems in the first half every week. When you score 6 combined points over 4 games in the first half, that's a real issue. That shows a lack of preparation, game planning, and frankly, play calling in game has just been pretty bad from my perspective as well. Christian Watson comes back 3 games ago, and it's like we don't know how to utilize him. He's
Right.
supposed to be the field stretcher, and yet that's not happening at all. The offense, in fact, it's almost like they're overcompensating. They're trying so hard to get Jordan comfortable, short throws, but that makes it really difficult play after play. Very predictable for defenses, makes it a lot easier for them to push downhill. And now you don't really have too many things that are going to be putting them on their heels, and unfortunately, trying to rely on things opening up in garbage time and in second halves or late in second halves. As nice it is that they've been able to put up some points in these second halves, it's just not good enough. So,
and Wags, you say that, and I'm with you 100%. Is it fair to say that this team has an identity crisis problem in the sense that there is no identity? Because, we talk about this, and this has been a theme, I think, over the last couple of years, is like, who is this team? And if you ask me, like, who are the 2023 Green Bay Packers through 7 weeks, I can't tell you. I don't know what their identity is. And that's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, it's supposed to be running the football and defense. As crazy as it is to say, the defense has held teams to 20 points or less in 4 out of the 6 games. Dane, if you told me at the beginning of the season the defense would hold teams to 20 points or less in 4 of the first 6 weeks, now the Lions, again, blew them out. But the offense couldn't get a first down until the last 2 minutes of the first half against Detroit. It's hard to play defense when your offense is going 3 and out literally every time, or turning the ball over, as it was the case in the first half of that game, and you can't get off the field. And it's literally impossible to play defense in this league if those are the circumstances that are happening. And I think the defense has done overall an amazing job of holding this team in games. So has there been moments? Yeah, the Falcons game and fourth quarter, I would have liked to see the defense close it out. But again, offense wasn't able to run the football at the end of that game in the fourth quarter, get any first downs. They were going 3 and out all the way through the fourth quarter. So this was supposed to be finally Coach LaFleur's team on the offensive side that was run first, offensive line, smash mouth football, play action, being able to have, those crossing patterns in motion. And frankly, you talk about identity, that's also on the head coach. So, it might seem like we are sitting here really being very, very critical of Coach LaFleur. And this isn't but I just want to be clear. This isn't a fire Coach LaFleur. I think he's a good coach. No. However, this is 2 years in a row, to your point, Dane, where the team has come out in the first half of the year and lacked that identity. Now, last year, you could point to a lot of things that might have been a cause for that. But at the end of the day, it is the head coach's job to set the identity and ensure that the players know what those game plans are, know what that identity is, and go out there and at least have a chance to improve every week. Are there going to be stinkers? Sure. But certainly you want to see some overall progression or trend. And if anything, this version of the Packers seems to be going in the opposite direction.
So, I'm not sure if we're going to have a lot of answers tonight after what we saw. I think that, coming out
let's talk about Jordan Love a little bit, Dane, because I think
that's exactly what I want to do. I'm very curious about that. And I'm curious, how are you feeling through 7 weeks of Jordan? What's your take? And then I'll share where I'm at. But I'm curious where where's your head at with Jordan after this?
Well, frankly, I'm not sure. He looked great the first couple of weeks. But what's been the main issue? Now, there's been some injuries. Didn't have Aaron Jones, so you can make that excuse. Obviously, losing Bakhtiari, say what you will. We all had our frustrations with that situation. That has certainly not helped this offensive line performance. Right. And I'm really really surprised by that, because as good as Bakhtiari is, I thought that we had an excellent offensive line all the way across the board. So losing one really good player in Bakhtiari, I did not think would really sink this offensive line. Now, you could argue they looked a little bit better yesterday, but was that them getting better, or just how bad Denver is at being able to get a push up front? I don't know. I think we'll have to wait and see next week and see if this offensive line shows at least some level of improvement. So there's that. Frankly, I think Coach LaFleur's game plans and play calling has been pretty much hot garbage the last 3 weeks. So it's hard for me to blame Jordan Love for that. Now, has Jordan Love made some poor throws? Has he made some poor decisions? Yes. But he's also a first-year starter in a situation where they're falling behind in multiple games in a row, and he's got a little bit more of that gunslinger mentality than I think we would have seen in an Aaron Rodgers. I actually like his mentality. Has it always led to the best decision-making process? No. But I will say this: dude isn't giving up. We have had multiple games now. The Saints game, this game, even if we would have won, I still would have been disgusted by the performance of the way that went yesterday. But, as bad as it was, Jordan Love made some good plays and helped this team put together a couple of drives and really had them in position to win the game. Would have I liked to see a little bit better execution in that final possession? Absolutely. Doesn't help when you get the ball down to the 39-yard line, for all intents and purposes, field goal range. You're looking at about a 3rd and 3-ish, and you get called for a hold, and all of a sudden you're back at 2nd and 20 instead of having an opportunity to run the ball, perhaps get a first down and get in position to kick the game-winning field goal. So there's a lot of things that I'd like to see in terms of performance improvement from Jordan Love, but I don't know what we really realistically could have expected that would have been a lot different than this. His first few games, statistically, he looked fantastic. People were pointing to the completion percentage. Well, now it looks like another overcorrection by Coach LaFleur yesterday, trying to give him some short passes, maybe to get in that rhythm to get some more accuracy and get both he and his pass catchers involved in the game early. Well, it was handicapping the entire offense for the whole first half. So it's hard to say, Dane. What do I want to see improvement from Jordan Love? Am I convinced he's the guy? No. Yes, I do want to see improvement. Can I for sure say that he's not the guy? No, I think the jury's still out. I think he's shown enough things that I'd like to see what happens under maybe some more optimal circumstances. But Dane, what about you? What are your thoughts on the Jordan Love situation at this point?
We're similar in a lot of respects there. I'll tell you what, going into this year, I thought it was going to be a bumpy ride. Okay. And a bumpy ride where we could still make the playoffs because the NFC North isn't very good. And, but right now what we're seeing is that there's some other issues with this team that maybe I hadn't didn't foresee, particularly some of the offensive line issues. But for Jordan Love, I look at it this way: what has gone right around him to make folks think that he could succeed under the current circumstances? I've watched him run for his life a couple times this year because the offensive line was just imploding around him. I've seen the play calling that at times I just think has been, I think you said hot garbage. I think that might be, cruel to hot garbage to call it that. I think the play calling's been so bad for Jordan in certain situations, and the Packers haven't been able to run the ball at all. A couple of these games, and the NFL is such a game of inches, right? But if the Packers, huge if, right? If they were running the ball a little bit better, we're winning more football games right now based on how the defense is playing and where we would probably be at with the standings, then all of a sudden it's sunshine and rainbows, and hey, Jordan's guy just has to improve a little bit, right? But since we're 2-4, I think that there's a skewed view, and frankly, Jordan Love has been asked to do too much, I think, through these games, because they are down going into the second half. And dude, as you said, he comes out there in the second half of these games and he doesn't quit. He keeps at it. So I love that attribute about Jordan. I think he truly is a leader on the team. I think he's a guy that wants the opportunity to throw the ball. He wants the opportunity to be put in a position to win football games. Do I think he's the answer? I don't know yet. But that's what this is about. Is I'm not canning Jordan Love after 6 starts in the NFL, or 6 starts this season. It doesn't make sense to do that. The Packers invested a first-round pick. They spent 3 years with the guy behind the scenes, and now he's the starter. What I want to see out of Jordan Love, Wags, is can he progress as this season continues, whether they're in contention or out of contention? Can he start to minimize some of the mistakes? Can he stand in the pocket and make some of the throws? Can he continue to use his legs to his advantage? Is he going to, when he has time, can he show that he can make the third read like he did earlier in the season? I think what we're seeing right now a little bit is a confidence problem in Jordan Love. I think that he's been hit a couple times too many early in the year, and he's kind of looking around. And I think that the coaching staff isn't doing him any favors with how they're managing the game with him. So what I want to see out of Jordan Love is I want to see him just continue to build, because I think he has the tools, Wags, to be a good quarterback in the National Football League. You don't win games the way that he won a couple of these games, by being just bad. It's not luck. It just isn't luck, okay? I think he can make enough throws at this level. I think he has a big arm. I love his gunslinging mentality. He just needs to rein it in a little bit in certain moments and continue to perfect his craft. But what I've noticed from Jordan Love is that the game doesn't seem too fast for him, okay? And I see so many quarterbacks where the game seems fast. It doesn't look too fast for him. I think there's a lot of other underlying issues going on here, and he hasn't been perfect, and he'll be the first to admit that. But I do think that Jordan's got some talent. I think there's something there, and I'm actually really excited to watch how the season progresses. Throw the record out with Jordan Love under center, because I think that he can continue to grow and improve. He just needs to keep getting those snaps, and damn, it'd be nice if the offensive line could keep him upright. And the run game could get going, and we could actually see what a functioning offense looks like under Jordan Love.
Yeah, no, I think that's all really well said, Dane. It just, when you're supposed to be a top 10 rushing team, I think was a reasonable expectation for this team, and you're in more like the bottom 5 right now at this point. And it's not like they've had a murderer's row of defenses that they've faced. Now, some of the rush defenses are solid, but it's certainly was supposed to be the calling card. Was the offense was supposed to be focused around the run game. It hasn't helped, certainly, that Aaron Jones has missed as much time as he had. Dane, I was surprised that he only got 23 snaps yesterday. He looked pretty healthy to me. So that leads me into my next question. This is going to be a little bit of hearsay, but what's up with the injury and the medical thing going on in Green Bay? This is a multi-year thing as well, but so many soft tissue injuries. It seems like we've got guys that miss more time than expected. I understand injuries happen in football. Every team goes through injuries. I get all of that. And certainly we are biased in our perspective. We're looking at a Packers injury report every week. We're not necessarily paying attention to what's happening on injury reports around the league. Other teams get very injured. I get all of that. But in a vacuum, I'm just wondering, Dane, does the overall approach to how the Packers manage injuries seem like it's working? Because this is a big part of success on the field, is having guys prepared and managed off the field in order to have their bodies right and in order to put themselves in the best position to be out there on Sundays. And you can go through a lot of situations. This is kind of, I don't want to turn this into a conspiracy thing or just a finger pointing thing, but I'm really curious your perspective on how the Packers seem to approach injuries with their players, because we talked a couple of weeks ago. It sounds like Aaron Jones maybe could have played in that Thursday night game, or I'm sorry, the Monday night game in Las Vegas, and out of an abundance of caution, they held him out. Well, is that is that the right approach, or is that a mentality that can seep into the urgency around how the Packers approach going out there and trying to win football games? So I'm just kind of curious where you draw the line on that, and what your overall thoughts on how the Packers manage injuries as an organization.
Well, it's October, so yeah, you know what that means in Wisconsin. You get Halloween, you get your pumpkin spice lattes, and you get your soft tissue injuries, because every October, Wags, and September and November, the Packers deal with more soft tissue injuries than I would actually love to run the numbers sometime and look at hamstring injuries in Green Bay versus across the league, because consistently, I mean, even yesterday, I think Savage left with a calf, and Eric Stokes just returned, and he got pulled with a hamstring issue. So how does that happen? I get injuries happen all the time. This is a violent game, but the soft tissue injuries, Wags, I don't have a good answer for it, but clearly something isn't working right. All right. I mean, I don't know how this can continue to be a case. And you're right. It's not like it's just, it's 2023. Wags, we could go back year after year, and I feel like we're dealing with the same kind of hamstring injuries and soft tissue injuries, and a very, very cautious training staff. I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes working with these guys, but I do know that it's just clearly it's broken, right? Something's broken here. Our guys aren't available when we can basically be. How long were the Packers off between bye? I mean, they were off for an extended period of time for their bye week, and they returned and they had 10 guys on the questionable list, Wags, going into this game.
I think 2 games in 18 days is what they were at. So
2 games in 18 days, and they have 10 guys on the questionable list going in after a bye. That makes me scratch my head, right? And most of them played, but still, there's something there that just doesn't add up to me, because at a certain point, guys are going to have to go, right? And I think you and I both know, and the fans that are listening to this know, these guys want to ball. These guys want to play, right? We know the guys that we know want to be out there playing ball. And so I'm not sure what the thought process is, but it seems like the Packers hold these guys out a little extra out of a quote abundance of caution, and then when they come back, they're not always right, that's too much, but there often seems to be some kind of follow-up injury, or there's a soft tissue, or there's something. Like, I don't quite understand it. It reminds me of when running backs in particular hold out to start the year, and then they come back and then they're like not in game shape and they seem to get hurt pretty quickly. It's the same kind of vibe in Green Bay. These guys come back and the soft tissue injuries just, and I know that they normally just kind of like, those injuries can fester, but it's a frustrating situation when it doesn't seem like the Packers have an answer, and they hold guys out extended period of time, and then there's all of these soft tissue injuries that we just can't seem to shake. I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I'm not criticizing any of the players in these situations.
Not at all. We said they want to play, I think.
Yeah. It's just, Mike, I think it's an issue of how the players and the injuries are being managed. I don't think it sends the right message, Dane, when you're overly cautious, especially with your star players, and they're looking around and you've got guys sitting out or missing time, and it just doesn't feel like it doesn't. You talk about soft tissue, and the word soft is right there. And that's been something that's plagued this Packers organization for years and years and years. And we've been consistent in saying that's not a player effort or a toughness thing on the part of the players. I think it's a mentality that's the softness that is the frustrating part for fans. It's not the physicality, it's the mentality. And I think injury management is one of those areas where that mentality can really seep in and fester. And then I think that just unfortunately, I think that feeds into the urgency then. And it's frustrating, I'm sure, for the coaching staff when they don't know if some of the guys are going to be available that they can game plan around. But yeah, that's a whole off-season issue. That's not an in-season thing that you can fix. But organizationally, the Packers, I think, really need to take a hard look at their medical staff and at their training staff, because collectively, I'm sure those folks over there are very experienced, highly professional. I know Dr. Andrews is very well renowned in the industry. However, as you said, Dane, there comes a point when some of those things have to be held accountable too, because it's clearly affecting and impacting the ability of the Packers to put the best product that they can out on the football field. And this is a young team. This isn't a team that's averaging like 32 years of age. They're the youngest team in the NFL. If anything, the injuries should be much lower than they have been in past years. And soft tissue with young guys should not be something that's creeping up as often. So that's what's really puzzling to me about this, Dane, is if anything, you go younger, recovery time should be faster. These guys should overall they'll get their nicks and actual injuries, but some of the other things that are happening that are more non-contact related are the ones that make you really scratch your head. So I don't want to go too far down that road, lest we tilt that conversation in a direction that sounds a little bit conspiracy related, but certainly, Dane, I think there's something to take a look at. But
worth mentioning, right? I mean, it's an every week thing. We have a laundry list of injury report every single week of similar injuries. It just doesn't, at a certain point, it's very relevant.
Right. Well, and I'll just say this. Maybe people could have accused me of maybe being a little bit tough talk in the past and old school, but this is why I always said you have 17 games to play. If you're healthy enough and you're cleared to play, you play, period. I don't buy this, just hold him out for another week so that he can get healthier. If you paid to go out there and play football, and if you're cleared and you're healthy enough to play, everyone's dealing with little nagging injuries. I know the players want to get out there to play. That's the mentality that I think they're missing, is if there's no urgency around, let's go out there and battle this out, gut this out. We're all in this together. Instead, you look over at the sideline and it seems like every week we've got a guy that's nursing, a minor injury, and the question of, well, maybe they could have gone, but we don't want to rush them back. So that I think is a big problem, Dane. I really do. So, all right, but moving on from that, we still haven't mentioned anything on the defensive side of the ball. We've decided, this is amazing. We've decided that defense is not one of our core issues, but Dane, I'm going to tee you up. Let's swing this a little bit. Do you have any other items that you really want to vent about here, or
no?
Are you ready to find some glimmers of hope from?
Let's find some glimmers, and it starts with the defense, right? I mean, I thought that there was a number of guys that stood out and played some really good ball. I mean, even Pro Football Focus, the highest rated guy in defense for the Packers was JJ Enagbare, and he played really well, Wags. I mean, he was rushing the passer. He's really emerging. I thought he had a nice rookie season, kind of came out of nowhere as a rookie, and he's building and building and building. We've seen him play the run far better this year than he did last year, and he's putting those tools together, and he really, I thought, looked strong, as did Rashawn Gary. And Rashawn Gary, another guy who, came in as more of a pass rusher, he's really playing the run better and more sound football right now as well. So a couple guys that instantly, when I watched the game, Wags, I was like, those guys are getting after it, snap after snap. When they're on the field, they seem to be getting after it. So right away, those guys looked really strong to me, but there was a lot of guys, weren't there, that I thought played some pretty good football against this Denver offense.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a lot of the unheralded guys, frankly, that seem to be stepping up and have been playing the most consistent football on the defensive side so far this year. Certainly talk about injuries. I really want to give kudos to both McDuffie and last week Eric Wilson for stepping in and honestly getting the job done at the inside linebacker position with Quay Walker. He was back this week, but missing time last week, and then certainly we've been without Campbell here for several weeks as he's got that ankle injury. So, Dane, though, I do want to say, Rashawn Gary, speaking of that, you keep pointing out that you've been a little bit frustrated. So going back to the frustration side, that we haven't heard anything about a potential contract extension for Rashawn Gary. So this is usually the type of guy that the Packers have been very proactive at extending. So do you think this is more just where he sees himself amongst the group of pass rushers in the league and how much the money has exploded at that position, and Packers have some more work to do to align and that eventually we'll see something, but nothing's come out. Rashawn hasn't said anything. His representation hasn't said anything. So is this hopefully just quietly being done, or do you have concern that the longer we go into the season, the less likely that we hear anything about a Rashawn Gary extension?
I'm hopeful that they're working on it. Rashawn Gary is the last guy, I think, to negotiate through the press. I admire Rashawn Gary as much as any guy, on the team. I think that he's a leader on the defense. He's our guy, right? He is Packer football to me. Not only on the field, but how he handles himself off the field. So, I'm frustrated only because I just want to get a deal done and know that we got Rashawn locked up for another 4 or 5, however many years, and a nice contract extension and take care of Rashawn and the family because, he's that guy. And, you go through, we've watched years, 20, 30, 40, almost years of football now, Packer football. And once in a while, right, there's a guy that steps up or you just see and you go, that guy's a little different. That guy, that's who you can build a franchise around on this side of the ball. They have him. It's Rashawn Gary, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm frustrated that he's not under contract for an extended period of time, but I am hopeful. The Packers, I think, historically have been really good at getting their guys locked up at a certain point. I'm confident it's going to happen, but I'd be lying to say, Wags, if I wasn't a little bit anxiety doesn't creep in once in a while, just because I just want to see the deal get done. I think it's good for both sides. And I think that they will, though, eventually come to an agreement.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things too. The Packers, I'm sure, this may not be completely fair, but I'm sure the Packers want to evaluate more of what they're going to get with Rashawn Gary moving forward, coming off of a major knee injury. So I'm sure that plays part of it. And then the other thing is how highly does Rashawn and his representation rank themselves in this pass rusher group? I mean, Joey Bosa just got $34 million a year from the 49ers, reset the entire market for pass rushers, which was already super high. Packers have the highest paid corner in the league right now in Jair Alexander. And I know he's one of those guys that you've been frustrated with for a couple of seasons. Frankly, they haven't gotten a top corner in the league return out of Jair Alexander since he signed that contract. It's not like it's Rashawn's fault, but same thing at left tackle. At the time, David Bakhtiari, highest paid left tackle in the league when he signed the contract, and they haven't gotten that return. So I suspect that, as you said, they're still working things out, hopefully. But to be fair, I do think that the front office has to do their homework and really be diligent about, how far they're willing to go to invest in Rashawn and what that right number is, so that he feels like he's valued and it's the amount that he certainly deserves, but it doesn't hamstring the Packers moving forward. So that said, Dane, I think, defensively, I will just say more broadly, I agree with your comments. And I said last week, if the defense can, on average, hold offenses to 20 points or less on most weeks, I like our chances. Now, I don't know if I can say that I like our chances with the way the offense has been playing. But they did have their opportunities to win both of those last two football games. The unfortunate thing is, Dane, I think the Raiders and the Broncos are two of the worst 5 teams in the league. And we were not able to go on the road and win even one of those in very, very winnable games, the way that those played out. So what does that leave the Packers then? Right now, I think realistically, we're just not a very good football team. I believe in this talent. And I'd like to believe in Coach LaFleur and this coaching staff to be able to show some improvement and turn things around. But I think it's safe to say the jury's out on that right now. So this is going to be a very important next few weeks to see if the Packers can show not only some improvement, but put some wins on the board. You look at the next 4 weeks, and do I expect the Packers to go out and all of a sudden win 4 in a row? Absolutely not. Not the way that they're playing right now. But on paper, they're 4 winnable games. They really are. So go out there and let's see some improvement in play, a little bit more consistency, maybe better starts on the offensive side of the ball, work on that identity. Let's get Aaron Jones more involved and allow him to be that offensive leader that we expected him to be coming into this season. And perhaps that can give this Packer team a little bit to hang their hat on and a little bit of an opportunity to start to build that identity moving forward.
Yeah, and that identity will start. And we have a preview podcast coming up on Thursday night. We'll be live, and then folks will be able to get the pod wherever each podcast over the weekend leading into Sunday's matchup. We're playing an old familiar foe, my least favorite team, the Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be a lot of fun previewing that game, Wags. And it really starts there. As tough as it's been so far this season, maybe a little bit of home cooking and beating an NFC North rival could change our fortunes quite a bit. We've seen it time and again with this organization, with this team over the years. You can't count them out, okay? Because all it takes is you need a spark. You see a spark happen, and yes, a lot of that magic's happened in the Aaron Rodgers era. But you know what? Screw it. It's Jordan Love era now, and maybe get some things rolling early on this week against the Vikings, and some good things can happen. This is a defense, I think, that feeds off of turnovers. This is a defense that feeds off each other. And, I think about it because this defense, they've done better than most people give them credit for. But also, you mentioned it, it's so damn hard, Wags, when your offense is going 3 and out, and then you got to run back out there and do it again and keep trying to make stops. If this offense can just move the ball enough, get some points on the board, and this defense can play with a lead, I think that they can take another step. I think that we've seen them take one step so far this year on defense. If we can start playing with a couple leads, I love the ball hawks in our defensive backfield. Rudy Ford's been phenomenal. Jair, get him back. Hopefully Stokes. Rasul Douglas, we know what he can do. I really have a lot of belief still in the defense. If the offense can just return the favor a little bit, I really, really like the chances. This team can go on a little bit of a run, but it's got to start, and it's got to start soon. It's already going to be week 8. We got to go beat the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday.
Yep, I think that's well said. So, folks, thanks so much for joining us after a tough loss again yesterday, and hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit of momentum and some happier things happening here starting this week against the Vikings. So we'll be back on Thursday night to preview that game. As always, be legendary and go Pack
go. Pack, go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will